So, as some of you may have seen, I've been using the safety bar a lot on my own training. If you watch our Ronin page and you watch the Ronin athletes who get like reposted, or you follow some of them, you'll also see that there's a few of them who've been using the safety bar as well. And you'll notice there's a distinct lack, or not a lack, or like not as many people doing back and front squats as you'd maybe think there would. Now, I just wanted to go through why. The main reason why I personally use the safety bar is because I had a hip injury that's been going on for quite a while. That originally I thought was my back, then I thought it might be my knees, then I thought it would be something else, and then I thought it might be my abs were weak, and then it turned out that I had a tear in a ligament and some other stuff on my hip that needed to be fixed. Now, when I started to come back, the main thing was trying not to compress my back so much that it would cause my hip to basically come out of position, and to put myself into positions that were pain-free, so that instead of going down, thinking, wincing, going down into a squat or going down into a position to try and strength train, being more worried about not hurting myself than I was about putting full effort in, I needed some variations that were going to help me to be able to train and just be able to think about doing the movement well and putting some aggression behind it. And the safety bar was the main thing that I found out I could use. And the reason I went and looked at the safety bar, as opposed to doing what I would have done 2 or 3 years ago, is interesting. And I just want to go through that first before I start going into the different ways you can use the safety bar. The main thing that I've started doing since calling my online coaching business and the collective of coaches and the company that I have and the community that I have, Ronin, is looking through the laws of the last Ronin, Musashi Miyamoto. One of his laws, one of the rules he wrote for himself, is have no preferences and only learn and master tools and weapons that you find useful. And what I would have previously have done would have been gotten bogged down in the idea, no, I have to squat or back or front squat. I'm not going to get strong enough to Olympic lifter. I'm not going to be able to lift as heavily, and I'm not going to get as good a result if I don't do stuff with a straight bar. So then years ago, I would have just tried to back or front squat and been in pain and done it in a weird way and fucked it up. Or I would have just not back or front squatted at all and pouted and had a tantrum until I could do it again, knowing I'd cut, and then eventually deep down knowing I'd come back weaker instead, and I'd have to then make back up the lost time from when I was injured and not being able to do the barbell squat variations. Now instead, this time round, I've looked at just something very, very simple. What is the outcome that I want? What are the tools I have available to me that I could use for this outcome? And what are the ones that I can use to the best of my ability, knowing that I have an injury that I have to rehab until it gets to a point where I can use all of the tools available to me again. Now, back and front squat, yeah, great tools. Those are the ones that have given me the biggest carryover to my Olympic lift so far. And the reason I've not really looked beyond those and not tried cambered bar or a safety bar and all that stuff before is because I've not really needed to, because the back and front squat serve their purposes. So now that those are off the table, because I can't train them heavy enough without pain or without imbalance or without being worried about fucking them up, I started to look at the other tools. And the safety bar, the spider bar, to an extent, the cambered bar didn't hurt at all. Anderson squats didn't hurt. Like bottom up pin squats didn't hurt. Cyclist squats didn't hurt. Good mornings, for some weird reason, didn't hurt. And if I did it all with the safety bar, it would take the compression off of my back and it would allow me to train hard. It would allow me to train fairly frequently, and it allowed me to load my legs and my back and my hips in a way that will help me to get stronger and build maximal strength. And that is the main thing that I was missing. What can I use to build maximal strength and to build hypertrophy, to build muscle mass and to get load through my body without worrying about it hurting me? So without it being an exercise where it's plus 10 strength, but then it's minus 10 strength again because you get injured or you hurt yourself even further, have to recover from it for ages. And that's why I started using the safety bar. So before I move on to how you can use the safety bar, I would encourage you for you guys to actually try to do this as well, to try to use different tools according to what your needs are. Like if you can't back squat very well because of your build, and no matter how hard you try, and being honest with yourself, if you've tried for years to back squat and all it ends up being is a hip and low back exercise, and you just don't seem to be able to do it very well heavily, but you can do it for reps, maybe you use it for sets of 5 to 10 and it's a great leg exercise. Or maybe you do cyclist squats instead, maybe you use safety bar, maybe you do front squats and box squats instead, or maybe you do snatch, grip, Romanian deadlifts, trap bar and goblet squats or something, depending on what you actually want the squat for. But just look at the tools available to you and look at it as if, are you using the back squat, the front squat as a means to an end, or are you trying to use that exercise as an end to the mean, as a means and an end into itself when you shouldn't be? That is the question for you, especially if you're an Olympic weightlifter or you're an athlete who runs sprints and jumps for your sport and you don't actually back squat for a sport. It's worth looking at other variations that you can at the very least mix in to get different training effects. You may even find you like one of them more. Okay, so now I'm going to go into why I actually use the safety bar, and how you use it. So the reason the safety bar is so good is because the actual pad is on it and the way it situates your body. It takes you out of this compressed position where your shoulder blades are pulled back and down, mostly by the bar, and forced down like this, and it pushes you. The bar basically pushes you into position. Even in the front rack, the bar is squashing you into position. If you have shoulder injuries or you have like tightness in your upper body, sometimes a front rack isn't comfortable or ideal, and a back rack actually can sometimes, especially if you're low bar, can really mess with your like, your scaps, your scapular health. It can mess with your biceps, your forearms, and your wrists. So a safety bar allows you to put the bar into the position. It allows you to distribute the weight where you want it to be, whether you want it to be a little bit in front, like a front squat, directly in line with you, like kind of like a neutral line, so halfway between a back and front squat, or whether you want it to be perfectly behind you, exactly like a back squat. You can put the weight distribution where you want it, very, very simply, just by moving your hands forwards and backwards with the handles. And if you turn it round and make it into an SSB front squat, which is what I really like doing at the moment, actually, ironically, it isn't a front squat, where the way the weight's distributed, with the way that you turn the bar when you flip it in reverse, it actually ends up making it like a perfect high bar squat. So if you imagine like Sully Manulu, Ilya Ilin, if you wanted to feel what it's like to squat like them, do a safety bar front squat, and you will feel exactly what it's like to have a perfectly erect torso that's slightly inclined forwards, and to be able to hold that back angle the whole way through the lift, and you will know exactly what it's like. And sometimes just by doing that, you can then go back into the main lift and it can be so much better. Something very simple, by like, let's say, just holding on to the handles, by just putting your hands on the pad like it's a backpack, can allow you to just allow the weight to sit where you naturally like it to be, because you're going to be able to find a place where your back will naturally find a position where it feels balanced, and you'll stand in a way which just allows the bar to sit where you want it. If you pull the handles back in towards you, you'll basically be able to pull your scapula back and down and depress your scapula and depress your sternum, so it feels a little bit more like a back squat, or kind of like a low bar squat or exertion squat. If you push the handles forwards or even slightly up, it will make it more like a front squat. Because of this, because it's just one tool that you can use, you can adjust what you're doing just through that. If you do safety bar box squats and you push the handles up, it's going to make it more about, like you're erect, about you holding it up a back position. It's going to be more quads and glutes. If you pull the handles back towards you and do a safety bar box squat, it's going to be more about your hips and back. It's going to be more of a posterior exercise. If you did an SSB front squat and you paused it and you did it to a box, it would be completely different to if you did it the other way around, and so on and so forth. Even doing stuff like good mornings with it is just lower impact, because the bar sits on you nicely and you're not worried about the bar rolling or how the bar's sitting. It just sits into the position nicely, and that's the reason why I use it. And the other couple of reasons is because when we use a bar for front squats or back squats, it tends to compress us backwards. So we're just trying to pull our back muscles as tight as we can, whereas the SSB actually allows us to have somewhat of more of a lengthened spine with it still being under tension, which is a much healthier position for it to be in, because everything else we do, snatch, clean and jerk, pulls, good mornings, back squats, front squats, everything pulls us into a shortened position through our spine, which isn't always great for it. Not because we're not supposed to do and be able to do that position, but because as weightlifters, it's almost all we do. We never actually do anything where we're doing a compound movement or producing force and allowing the weight to sit on us, where we do it with somewhat more of a hollowed position or a relaxed position where we're almost slumping, and the safety bar is another thing that allows us to do that. And the last benefit I'll talk about for it is just that it really requires next to fuck all mobility to be able to do decent squat with it. So because it's taking the upper mobility requirements out of the way, it literally just allows you to focus on what your legs are doing. So you could do a full depth safety bar back squat, whether you had flat shoes, whether you had weightlifting shoes on, whether you had to have a little heel elevation. It just makes it a simple squat variation to do, because the bar sits where you want it to. You don't have to fight against the bar, which is what it can sometimes feel like when you do a barbell back squat. So if you're looking for a good squat variation to do and you're not really sure what it should be, try and check out the safety bar, because it will honestly make things a lot easier. It's also a lot easier to recover from, and you can do a few different variations with it. And when you start putting stuff like bands and chains on, it can be a little bit more fun, and it's just something different. You cannot honestly say that by doing a squat that is loaded on your shoulders, that you can load eventually nearly as heavy as you can in the same format as you can a back or front squat. And when I say that, I mean as in you can literally load it continuously. You can improve your maximum strength through it. You can't say that that's not going to carry over to your Olympic list, because you're doing it in roughly the same ranges of motion as a back or front squat. You're doing it in the same format. It is a quad dominant or a leg dominant movement. You're sitting down and standing up. You're putting it in the different positions where you can manipulate what position you have your torso in, same as you would a back or front squat with a straight bar, and you're able to load it up consistently, and you might even be able to recover from it faster. So think about, if you're really having a hard time squatting, recovering from it and getting what you need to out of it without the negative effects, think about using the safety bar, because it might be really helpful for you.